I'm back. We're here.
Perfect.
Okay. Attendees are being dismissed. Cool. Okay. We'll let people roll. Wow. Yes, people are here. Hello. Okay. Nicole's from Indianapolis, obviously. That's where are you in Indianapolis right now?
I am.
Okay. What's up, Andrew? Amy's here from Austin, Texas. My wife's going to Austin next week, 2 weeks, Cleveland, Ohio. I'm in Vermont.
Oh, nice.
Chantal's here. She made this happen. Thank you. From Bozeman. Okay, look, I want to shout everybody out, but we're going to cover a lot. We could talk forever. Mitch and I are now fully onboarded with Goldcast. We will not screw this up today. For everybody watching, we will be recording this. Yes, we will be recording this. But here's what I'm going to interview Mitch. I have a lot of questions I want to ask. And selfishly, I think that I'm going to try to speak on behalf of a lot of marketers that I've been part of in the community and other places, because I wanted to do a session on like demystifying SEO for B2B. You and I were just talking backstage about like, I've made mistakes in the past where I've underinvested in SEO or thought about it wrong or thought I was in too crowded of a market. But you've seen time and time again that this is a fundamental piece of a modern B2B marketing strategy. And I think that's why there's so many people that showed up for this. We had this idea to partner on it, but I didn't expect to have over 1,000 people registered. So I think this is a hot topic. I want to dive into that. You can put all your questions in. There's a Q&A. You can put text Q&A. Mitch and I are going to pause every now and then and take some questions as they come up. But I'd also love to give you the opportunity, if you took the time out of your day to be here today, you can also do a video Q&A. So if you raise your hand, you can actually hop up on, we'll pull you up on stage, and I'd love to hear from you directly. So Mitch, that said, thanks for doing this. Give us some quick background on you, from the first marketing person at Lessonly to now founder of a SaaS company. What's your backstory?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, Dave. Stoked to be here, and thank you all for showing up. Hopefully we can be helpful today. So background on me, actually my personal mission statement is to help others grow. So days like today is like just fantastic in my mind. And that just so happens to be our company mission statement as well, is to help others grow. But so I've been doing SEO since I was in college. I was just not satisfied at all with the level of digital marketing education going on when I was going through school, and so started doing SEO kind of nights and weekends during college. But fast forward to Lessonly, I joined as the third employee overall, but first marketing hire, and built out that whole marketing program. I actually tried to completely avoid SEO at Lessonly. I don't know if I've told you that, Dave, but
no.
I didn't want to be viewed as this like one trick pony kind of thing, and so I tried to completely do everything but SEO.
Even though that was your background.
Even though that was my background. Yeah,
you silly young marketing person.
Exactly.
It's like you need all the advantages that you can get, and let's just throw away the channel that I actually know how to use, and let's come up with something brand new. Awesome.
Exactly. That was me, and learned quickly. So I was like, mid doing all these other things, and then published one, download with a form at the time. We did end up ungating it eventually, but it was in vogue at the time. It was pre you, Dave.
People can't say the word form around. I don't like the drift thing is in the past now. It's okay. We people say the word like they're like, we used an F in front. Yeah. We used an F on our website, and I'm like, what? They're like, a form.
Exactly. So I launched our first downloadable asset on a Monday, and by Friday we had over 100 people who had downloaded it. And so we realized that market was really good for organic search, and so grew that out a lot. We did invest a lot in organic search, and that is still their number one channel as a single channel to drive growth today. But after 5 years of working at Lessonly, just had the time of my life, but had this long-term dream of starting my own agency. So I did. That was February of 2019. Started just me, just doing services for about 18 months. Had a great time doing that. But I was holding our customers back because it was me plus a spreadsheet,
Right.
and that has only so much scale. So I decided to actually turn this into a software company, and that's what we are today.
It's amazing. So, wait, just I, the goal of this is not to make it like for those listening to not to make it a full Demandwell story, but I'm just curious. So I'm going to ask, and we're going to get into the SEO stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, how did you? What part of the like human agency part does Demandwell replace?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's, we like to say it's the best of both worlds of what exists today. So, you've got agencies that can have really high customization, but really low scale. And then on the other side, you've got, data dump tools like SEMrush that provide nearly infinite scale, but almost no customization. And so we've found this balance between the two where we've created a platform that can be, very scalable, but also customized to each individual customer.
Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about SEO.
Let's do it.
How as a marketing leader, marketer at a B2B SaaS company today, building out a marketing strategy, where does SEO fit?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it fits in a marketing mix. It is not a silver bullet. And I know some people are shocked when I say something like that. Like, we actually find that folks that are doing well in many channels do better in organic search than those who say, I'm going to abandon everything else and just do
Actually,
organic search.
can we take
Yeah.
this back even further?
Yeah.
Let's start like this.
Yeah.
Who owns SEO? Like where does SEO sit in a modern marketing team? Who owns it and what is the job that role should be playing?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Love that. So I would argue, if teams are split between brand and demand, I think it lives in the demand side. I think SEO often gets plugged into the brand side because it's involved with and tangential to content, and content typically lives on brand.
Hmm.
But I actually view SEO as a distribution channel along the same exact lines as email, paid, ads, all of that.
Okay, so you're talking about you have a content team and you have a demand gen team. I would say most companies here have that.
Yep.
You're actually basically splitting parts of the function. And so I like this approach also because I think I've kind of also found that like oftentimes if you want to hire good writers, you need to hire good writers who want to write. They don't want to do the things that you might need content to do, like grow traffic, convert at this clip, rank for these keywords. It's very rare as that same personality type. And so when you split
Exactly.
them out, you can actually achieve those things. But what's the healthy way for how do those two functions like work together? Because I've seen it kind of like content team has one set of goals, SEO team within demand gen has another set of goals. What are like the rules of engagement?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, one thing on how to find those people, a question I love to ask in interviews for that kind of role is, do you identify as a writer who can market or a marketer who can write? And marketers who can write are probably better fit for the SEO performance side. Writers who can market probably better on the brand side. But yeah, I think it totally depends on the team culture and team leadership in terms of how those two parts are working together. There's a lot of opinions around this stuff, and where things go south is when demand has a very strong opinion that it needs to be only SEO and only distribution, and brand is let's never say the word algorithm ever again in our life. And like when that's the culture, it's very difficult for them to work together.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, if we can all be on the same page that we're in business to drive growth. It's not an art project, it's not a writing competition. It is a business. If you can align around that, then I think you can find that balance.
Well, it's like also it's not binary in that like just because you're doing SEO doesn't mean you can't also write a short blog post about your podcast in a way that is meaningful, or write something else creative. I think you can pick and choose your spots. You do them both. So, all right, if Demand Gen owns SEO, what do you like to see from like a goal standpoint? Like how do you measure that channel? How do you set a goal for it? Demand Gen is responsible for bringing in X million, creating $10 million in pipeline. How does SEO fit into that puzzle? How do you set measurable goals around SEO?
Yeah. So as you know, having been in the marketing seat, I am really not ever satisfied with goals that are less than revenue sourced. If I were in that seat again today, and had an SEO, someone focused on SEO reporting to me, I would hold them to revenue sourced from that. There's a couple problems with that though. One is we find a lot of marketers today still have a really difficult time attributing revenue, especially to organic channels. It's a lot easier when you can have your UTM codes, and that's pretty clear. But when you're falling through the cracks, that can be really difficult. But I would challenge everyone on the call to figure it out. There are ways to figure it out, and you can, and would definitely recommend that you do that.
And so that's kind of like you're just overall like first principle thinking, like whether I own SEO or content or events or social media, my number one thing that I want to try to figure out is revenue source from that channel.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be perfect. You're not going to have perfect attribution, but it's like starting to solve the puzzle and having like kind of proxies for just starting to think like that, right?
Exactly. And it takes a lot of work to do it. When we were at Lessonly, we used Visible, and I'm a huge fan of that tool. But it took probably 9 months before we started to trust it.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of work. The other part is, when you think about getting revenue, and this applies to all channels, but in organic in particular, time to go from I'm starting this channel to I have revenue coming in from this channel. It's always a lot longer than people think. And one of the things that I think is contributing to that is most folks forget about deal cycle time. If you decide to start paid search or organic search or anything today, and you have a 60-day sales cycle, you shouldn't evaluate it 30 days from now. And I see people doing that all the time. You should be evaluating it 90, 120 days out, that kind of thing. Like let your sales deal cycle actually flow through. But in the case of organic search, it's very non-binary in terms of, are you doing well or not? Yes, you should be getting revenue. I would say you should be getting revenue, definitely within the first year, if not, for 6 months to some degree. But, when it becomes a truly repeatable source of revenue for you, that can take a little bit of time. And so showing those milestones along the way is really important.
Can you go a level deeper on this? A question from Krista, which is great, which I was going to follow up on. Okay, so obviously overall goal, revenue source from that channel, but like let's go a layer deeper and say what are the 2 to 3 KPIs that you as like CMO Mitch or whatever marketing leader Mitch wants to get out of SEO? If you're the demand gen leader, what are those couple KPIs that are more specific?
Yeah, absolutely. So, backing out of revenue, I want to know meetings, how many or deals.
Okay, so meetings or deals from search.
Yeah. So are we actually, talking to humans? And of course, PLG world, that may not happen, but are you getting deals? Is it real business opportunity? However you measure that. And then taking a step back from there is, what's the inflow of those? So whether you call those leads or, first touches or whatever, how many of those are happening actually on your site? We, at Demandwell, we have reporting that takes it beyond that to look at, Google Search Console and see like, where are you today? Where could you be that you're not even? So like we definitely go further, but if I'm putting on CMO hat, I want to know, are we making money? Are we getting at bats to make money? And then, what's the highest level inflow? And then, I ideally like to look at the conversions between those as well.
There's a lot of nuance in there though, right? Because
Yeah.
like it's not as easy as just like, well, how many meetings did we get from organic search? Because so much of that content might not even be conversion focused. It might be an article that your company wrote like 3 years ago. How does that factor in to this?
Yeah, I think it's important to figure out your rules and stay consistent. And if you're looking at this, if you have it defined well, and you all agree that that is your definition and stick to that definition over time, that's how I've gotten around it. That's probably not perfect at all, but that is how I've done it in the past.
So you could take a more macro view and say that like organic as a overall we're going to look at revenue from organic as an overall channel. So of all the traffic that comes to our website, the slice of it that is organic, we own that in some way. Obviously, there's some things you can't always control. And
right.
So you're looking at that as a source. And then from there, you can drill down into, okay, of that organic traffic, what are the keywords? What are the landing pages and articles, right? How are those converting? What are the opportunities? Where's high volume, low conversion, or high conversion, low volume? What levers do we have to move each of these needles as then it ultimately drives meetings?
Absolutely.
How do you set, like, if you're hiring you're hiring me, I'm a new SEO person on your team. Like what goal do I have coming in? Because one mistake that I've made with SEO is like either hiring for it or hiring an agency for it. You're like, hey, Mitch, your goal is to grow traffic 30% this year over the year. And that is just like it's a terrible goal. Like it's not a real thing. So like, what do you want that person to actually come in and do? What do you do in the first month, the first 3 months? How do you break that down into weekly and monthly rhythms? Like what should they be working on, and what are their goals?
Yeah. Well, one really tactical thing that I love to do is I like someone in this role hitting a publish button on day one. So literally day one, I will challenge that person, hey, get a blog post out today, period. Because one of the kind of principles we've found to be true is that our most productive customers are always our most successful customers. The folks that are just getting after it and not waiting around. That leads to tremendous success. But that's one very tactical thing. I think overall, where I would, hey Andrew,
what's up?
Keep going, Mitch. Finish this thought, and then we're gonna tag in Andrew.
All right, cool. I'd say overall, the most important thing for the first month, in my opinion, is audience. Understanding who the people are that your company is trying to attract, understanding their brain. We can tap into, I like to say Google is the single largest social experiment that has ever happened from a data perspective, because they get like 6 to 8 billion data points every single day, 15% of which keywords typed in are actually have never been typed into Google before. So it's just massive and it's always changing. So being able to tap into that through the keyword planner in Google Ads and understanding your audience through the lens of what they're searching in Google, I think is absolutely critical. Okay, and then you get to production.
Sarah says, is your SEO person responsible for actually posting normally? I haven't heard that before. I would probably say that in most teams, most startups, they might be. You might have to also do content creation. Like I've had it where I had a writer and the SEO person actually owned kind of like posting in HubSpot, managing all that stuff. But I also think, like to Mitch's point, to have even if the SEO person is not doing the writing, to have them hop in and like, let's update some old content on your first day. I think that's what you can mean by publishing a post.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, do check something off a list that first day.
I want to go back to this, and then we're going to go to Andrew. Krista said in chat also, do you have any real example of when SEO delivered or didn't deliver your new goal or your revenue goal? Sorry.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've got tons on both sides. You want me to answer now?
Yeah, give me like one or two examples from your career.
Yeah. So I'll give you a couple from the Lessonly world. That one that I shared that we got 100 downloads within that first week. We, I think, closed one customer ever from that. And we had thousands and thousands of leads that had come in from that, but they never got to revenue. And that's why I'm so passionate about holding to revenue. It's because you can get so many leads all day long from organic, but if they're not converting, then was that really actually valuable? Actually, It's probably negative because you just wasted a bunch of salespeople time. On the flip side, though, if you were to search for online training software, that's a very, non-exciting keyword, but it is absolutely critical to their strategy and has led to many, many dollars of revenue coming in the door from that.
Yeah, I'll give you another example. Early days of Drift for me, we were trying to build this category of conversational marketing. We didn't have a ton of content on live chat. I missed out on a ton of qualified conversations because we didn't want to be seen as live chat, and so we didn't have an SEO strategy around live chat. Where the reality of it is, I should have been fishing in that pond and then telling people about here's how we think about it and doing it a different way. And so I think I missed out on a huge slice of revenue. Okay, Andrew, let's go to you. So people don't have to I know you're just on camera in front of everybody sitting there trying to hang out.
I should have my actual t-shirts on for this.
Andrew's consistently the top commenter or contributor. So I'd love to see this. Go ahead, Andrew. You got the mic.
Thanks, Dave. Mitch, good to see you. Can you talk about link building? I always thought about SEO as kind of like brushing your teeth, but like link building is like the flossing, like the stuff that people don't actually do. But your doctor's always asking you like, hey, are you actually doing that every day?
Yeah.
Can you talk about how that's changed over time? I mean, we got to the point where we're like literally putting this on PR, putting a quota on them of like how many outreaches are you doing, domain authority and stuff like that. But I've been out of that game for a few months. I want to know what the latest is.
Yeah. Well, link building is definitely the like ugly underbelly of SEO, past, present, and future, I think. And the reason
I got a couple of link building emails this morning to build some links on my website. If anybody would like, I could forward them to you.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. And the reason why it is so targeted, we don't have people emailing us every day saying, hey, here's some really great free content for you. The reason why people really focus on link building is because it's the tiebreaker, and it is the most impactful part of the algorithm. If all the other things are equal, that is going to break the tie. That's why it's viewed as so important. But Google absolutely rewards anything that is more effort. So the more effort of the type of link, the more likely it will actually have that impact. So Google's really good at knowing, people are getting emails every single day from all of these companies, and they have lists. They have literal lists of websites that they know that are being pitched from those companies. And so they know that the level of effort there is almost nothing. Whereas, getting, published in TechCrunch, that's really difficult. And so that's always going to be better. So at the end of the day, my take on link building is if you would be doing it anyways, if you were doing fill in the blank thing anyways, I would do that, but filter it with how can I get links from this? So if you're doing PR, I would not have a quota of links for PR, but I would say you should be doing PR, and you could scale PR for the sake of PR, but then along with that, actually, have that filter of links as well.
Well,
Same thing.
isn't it also like chicken and the egg? Like, it's like, isn't the best link building strategy, wouldn't it be great content? Because ideally you're not emailing people saying, hi, we wrote this article, can you link to it? It's like you created this amazing piece of content that everyone in your niche is talking about, and they're linking to it and sharing it around. And that's how you build links. Like, that's
absolutely.
I can't, I'm not an SEO expert, but obviously I talk about every topic like I am an expert. But I just can't see a world where like I could have somebody, like I just can't see a world where you're just reaching out. You have someone on your team reaching out for the sake of backlinks. That feels like a decade ago tactic. That today is just like, maybe you'll get a meaningful link from that, but like there's just no way that that's going to be worth anybody's time. And then the only way to do it is to automate it, which is the really, spammy, junky way of doing it. And so it's just like, is that really worth it? Or like, maybe if your content team is doing like one killer pillar piece of content every month, maybe you send out a couple outreach emails with that, not asking to link to it, but maybe like I used to always hit up like our VC firms, partners, investors, advisors, asking them to share content like that we did. And so I also think it like can speak to this pillar content approach, which is like, you can't promote content every single day, but if you create one pillar piece a month or two a quarter, you can do it like during these occasions.
Yeah, exactly. That is definitely the best way to truly scale. Because a lot of times when you look at the deficit of yourself versus a competitor, you're not talking like 2 or 3 links. It's usually an order of magnitude larger, whether it's 1,000 or 10,000 links. And to think of conversion rates of email to links, I mean, you're gonna have to send out 1 million emails just to get that level of link. So why not take that same amount of time, do what you should be doing, be a part of the conversations on the internet and in forums and Quora, like all those places that you should be anyway, and then also add a link while you're there.
All right, I want to go to this question in chat in the Q&A from Cameron, and keep. I'd love to do another video Q&A if you're out there. Although I just got this message: mouse battery very low. And this is the worst. If you have this mouse, like once it's out, you're not working for hours because you got to plug it in. It's the worst thing. So Mitch, you might have to drive later.
Okay, perfect.
How do you think about the growing? This is from Cameron. How do you think about the growing challenges that privacy, lack of tracking ability present for the attribution in SEO, specifically the fact that you are not able to track all of the visits?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it goes back to what I said earlier about just staying consistent. And I know people don't really want to hear that. But at the end of the day, there was never a point in time when it was exact. There was never a point in time. Google Analytics, not a lot of people know this. When you get a report from Google Analytics, it is not real data. It is a sample that they have extrapolated. Unless you're paying for the 360 suite. Even that is technically not accurate. So there's this misconception that there has been a better time in history. It's really not. To me, it's there's always been holes all through our measured marketing. But yeah, just have to be comfortable with that margin of error. And if you have it defined, and you have everyone bought in from the top down, everyone bought in of the definition of what you're tracking. And stay consistent with it, I think that is the best result. Never, ever try to get accuracy to be the primary concern.
What would happen if there was no Google search data? Could you still have an SEO function?
I think so. If there was none, it would be... I would then rely on third parties more than I do now. Like I really like, we use exclusively Google APIs in our reporting because it's from the horse's mouth. If they cut that in the future, third parties would be what we would lean on.
Got it. I was just thinking like, obviously all the search is happening on Google, but there's so much value in that, knowing which page, like take out the keywords, like which pages are getting organic traffic, which are converting. You could still maybe come up with proxies in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it's all observational, like.
But that's interesting to hear you say that. It's interesting to hear you say that Google, like the Google data is not perfect also. And so it's just like another reminder to like use it directionally, but ultimately you got to be able to take it as an input and then go make a decision.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, here's another one for you. This is from Andy. Can we get Mitch's perspective on in-house versus outsourcing SEO? A bunch of people upvoted this one.
Yeah, for sure. So it all depends on your team, in my opinion, and your goals and what you're trying to do. You know, there are so many different ways to slice this cake. But my personal opinion is that the strategy and management of SEO should be internal. You should have someone who is tied to that as part of their personal KPIs.
In demand gen.
In demand gen, yeah. From a content production perspective, within organic search, which I talk a lot about content because the way that I break search down is into 3 buckets. We've already talked about 2 of them, but one we haven't yet. So we have an acronym called ICE. So it stands for infrastructure, content, and endorsements. Infrastructure is the technical stuff that, a lot of people equate SEO to the technical stuff as well. Totally disagree with that. It is such a small part of it, especially these days. It can be impactful if done wrong, but it's never going to be the reason that you win. And so that's like check the box and move the heck on. Then you get into content, which is there's so much room in the content world to grow and to create revenue. And then there's endorsements as well, which we talked about, that we call links or backlinks. We call those endorsements.
Okay, hold on. Let's pause on this. And so, so this is your kind of overarching SEO framework. It has 3 pieces in it: the infrastructure, the content, and the endorsements. On the infrastructure, let's just briefly talk about what's in that bucket. Because I don't know. Is it just mean the website? What does that mean?
Yeah. So technical things. Related to website stuff. So things like URL structure, URL consistency. Everyone on the call, I would recommend going to your website and see if both the trailing / version of your URLs and a non-trailing / version of your URLs are rendering. If so, that's actually a canonical problem. I won't go into more detail, but take a look at that. Things like that. So like, how's your URL structured? What's your page speed? That kind of stuff.
Okay, great. Second one is content.
Yep.
That one I think is obvious, which is how do you execute? What's the actual creative? What's the content? Articles, videos, content on the site, and then what's endorsements? Links?
Yeah. So endorsements is links. Yeah.
Cool. You could almost think of measuring the SEO role by this framework, right? It's like, hey, Dave, you're our new SEO person. The 3 things that you own are infrastructure, content, and endorsements. And there's goals around each. Like infrastructure, we need to complete XYZ project by this date. Content, do this by this date. Endorsements, set a goal of building X number of links. This is great. People like this. Yeah. And if you didn't know, chat, people really liked your framework.
Good. Okay. Good.
So, okay. Sorry, I wanted to get you to explain each one of those, and I'm coming back to this. I take a lot of notes and whatever.
Yeah.
So in-house versus agency really depends on if that's what SEO is supposed to do, infrastructure, content, endorsements, you're going to hire in-house versus agency based on who's on your team today, current expertise today, what's available in the market. Don't you think it's hard to just say in-house versus agency? Because like, what if you want to hire in-house, but you actually can't? You cannot find an SEO manager that you're going to pay 120 grand or whatever. You can't find that person. So then you only have one choice, right? It's very challenging to say.
Oh yeah, it is for sure. And yeah, I'm glad we went through that framework because that is how I would think. It's like, do you want in-house or agency for infrastructure? You want in-house or agency for content? You want in-house or agency for endorsements? And just acknowledging that they don't all have to be the same. And frankly, a lot of times my preference would be that they're not all the same. Someone who's really good at creating relationships and community management, like whoever's running your social media, that should be the person who's doing the endorsements. totally different thought process than the person who nerds out about making sure that your trailing slash is your canonical source. Very different people.
Right. Wait, so how does social media own the endorsements?
Yeah, so I think that the person who's going to be good at social is a similar personality type of someone who is going to be good at endorsements as well, because it's all relationship building.
Got it.
You know, the things that you should be doing is having conversations that are, you know, externally facing, like what a social media person would be doing.
Yeah, and it's like a natural extension, and you're not going to carve out a separate headcount person just for that one thing.
Right.
Okay, so but do you think you can? Well, I guess you can. I was going to say, like, infrastructure, you could definitely hire an agency.
Yeah.
Content feels like a more challenging one, but I also see a lot of SaaS companies that have a content team and also a content agency, so they can just do more at scale, right?
Yeah. So that's what I was going to say, was because I think the question was, what's my preference? My personal preference is to have someone on the team dedicated to managing content, but not have them create much content. I love to see, you know, a lot of freelance work. I love to see a lot of, you know, industry subject matter experts. I love to see taking other employees from the team and, you know, subject matter experts from the team and having them engaged in content creation as well. So I personally like when that person on the team who's the content manager is genuinely managing the flow, managing the strategy, but not necessarily typing in the words.
I think to me, that's like the dream hire for like who owns SEO. It's not just the super technical person. It's like, I'm going to hire Mitch. Mitch is content manager. That is not content producer. He's not creating content. He owns the pipeline of content. And so not only does he own the pipeline, but he's managing all the sources, like you mentioned. I think that's great advice, but he also owns the infrastructure. His team owns it. I think that's the best way to separate it out. That's great.
Yeah.
And just a mindset, the content manager versus producer.
Yeah, exactly. And the biggest benefit, I think there's a lot logically that makes sense there, but in practice, the biggest benefit is burnout or lack thereof. If you've got one person and they've got a quota to crank out content, that person will burn out. No matter how much they love writing, they will burn out. So I love to distribute that load across as many people as possible, so that every piece of content is fresh and not, you know, just a stressful exercise for the person creating it.
Well, it should be like a team thing. Like, so ideally you have like somebody who manages content and somebody who creates content. And the content person is just like, I'm a writer. She's like, I love writing. Let's talk about what topics are, and those are, so it's not just like the writer is just coming up with topics on her own. She's working with the content manager who's giving her a list of like, okay, here's some things that we need content about. Then you have these two completely separate roles. Like,
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, we had another question in chat that I want to get to. This is from Carl. Can you, let's do this. Check this out. Can you check that Goldcast feature out? Could you talk to the different types of content and search types and the alignment needed, if at all, would be good to get an overview? Great question.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, Google over the past 2 decades has gone from a single algorithm to what they call the universal search, which contains so many sub algorithms. You know, I actually watch a ton of YouTube. I'm big into like off-roading, so like I'll skip Netflix all day long and watch YouTube. YouTube, obviously, probably the most popular and common example of that, but you know, video content, there's a separate one for image, there's a separate one for maps. You know, now we've got podcasts in the mix as well as a separate index and a separate, you know, ranking and all that stuff. And then when it's jammed together, you know, that's where you get universal search. And so, you know, I think a question I get around this a lot is, you know, what should I do for image search, or what should I do for video search, and things like that. And my advice is, don't start with the media type first. Start with what keyword you're trying to attack first. Because if you can understand, and in order to find that, understand your audience first. So if you can understand your audience, you can understand their mindset from that, giant social experiment that is Google. You can understand what they're looking for. It's as easy as going in, typing that into Google, and seeing what shows up. If there are images there, you better believe you should be dominating that image search result. If there are videos there, you should have all 4 or 5 videos in that carousel. But if there's none of those there, don't worry about them. Just focus on the keywords that you're trying to tackle, and focus on doing the best that you can for each of those. Not necessarily starting from media type and going from there.
Well, I also think he's talking about like different types of content and search types. Well, this could be one, so who knows? But I'm also, there might be, isn't there like another layer, which is, or a different layer, which is understanding your buyer's journey and what different types of searches. So if someone's going to buy Lessonly or whatever,
yes,
how do you work backwards? And so, like, do you have a framework for making sure that those things are kind of mapped out?
Yes, absolutely. So we actually have a lot of that baked into Demandwell when we're prioritizing keywords. Like that's literally how we have mapped out our like prioritization formula. And essentially what I would say, we work with SaaS companies mostly. So, apologies for those who that doesn't apply to, but in that world, in the SaaS world, words that contain, or, keywords that contain subwords like software, solutions, comparisons, alternatives, those kind of things that are just so indicative of someone who's lower funnel, that to me is, much higher priority to tackle those first. Because I always like to start with as low in the funnel as possible and work your way up. But then, so that's kind of our low tier. The middle tier is where we talk about things like that, say, templates and guides, examples and samples, that kind of thing, where it's clearly someone who's in the loop and they're looking to do a better job of what they're trying to do, at their job. And then the third bucket, kind of the tofu idea, top of funnel user searching, would be things like, what is fill in the blank, or why is fill in the blank important, and that kind of thing. I am a huge believer that you should have content across all 3 of those buckets. But I personally would start with lower funnel and then work towards mid and then work towards top.
It's great advice. I hope people caught that. Just like to be able to come out of this session today and just hit pause on, like, hold on. If you don't know that, because most companies are just cranking out content, new blog articles, new this, new that, new website content. But if you don't first have this mapped out from bottom to mid to top, why go create more blog posts when you don't have examples, you don't have guides, you don't have templates, you don't have how to map all those things out? It can be an hour at the whiteboard, map all those things out and figure out, maybe we have some pages that already exist. What other content? I love that. Even just like the simple philosophy of, like, how much do you think about your funnel and you're coming to your website as cold traffic, warm traffic, and hot traffic? There's going to be different search terms that get people there. Also, I think not only is starting at the bottom of the funnel smart from a conversion and revenue perspective, but for most companies, that's going to be a more specific keyword. And so, like, if you sell marketing automation software and you want to get someone to join, it's going to be hard to do that writing very, very top of the funnel 15 marketing quotes, as your piece of content. It grounds you in that bottom of the funnel product marketing content.
Exactly. And going back to timing of success, it is so critical to start at the bottom, because to that point, let's say, whether you are interested in Demandwell at all, ever or not, if you're doing any SEO and you're starting SEO today and you think, I'm going to create a blog post that is this incredibly high funnel blog post. The reality is the people that are searching for that are going to be months away from being interested in any kind of actual sales opportunity. So what you've just done is taken all your time that you should, taken all your time to create this piece of content, you plug it in, and then at the soonest, you should expect, 3 to 6 months later, and then you've got your deal cycle, and then it's going to be potentially revenue or not. Yeah. Whereas if you start low funnel and that person's ready to buy in the next 2 weeks, those are the kind of people that you can start to really crank out revenue from organic search way faster than if you just kind of let it be.
Well, that's great advice. Well, I mean, you at least need that foundation.
Yeah.
And also, like, it also kind of sets the bar for, like, you can do top of the funnel stuff, but it can't be average, because the goal of top of the funnel stuff should be to increase the name of awareness of Demandwell. We're going to do this top of the funnel article, and yeah, maybe it's 9 months away from a sales cycle, but because we want to drive more awareness. And so you do this top of the funnel article, you do this top of the funnel campaign, all of a sudden now, 2 months later, 20% more organic traffic to Demandwell. That's how these two things work together. You have to be able to think about them separately, because if you try to do them, because if you just take this advice, you're like, well, then we're never going to create any top of the funnel content. So Mitch, do you hate top of the funnel? It's like, no. They're just, you have to be able to do both in different places. Okay, we got a bunch of different questions, and I got more follow-ups I want to follow up with. Quick one for you before we go back to questions. You mentioned YouTube. Should the SEO, given how the rise of video content on mobile, all that, like, is YouTube a channel that this SEO person also needs to own? It's not just blog content today.
I think, again, it goes back to the audience, and the keywords they're searching. If by and large, you can find that there's videos throughout your industry, heck yeah, you should be on it. But otherwise, I would not.
Yeah, because I see a lot of B2B companies make the mistake. They just kind of like take videos that they did and upload them to YouTube, but that's not going to work. Versus, like, what you're talking about is like, oh, there's clearly a niche of off-roading YouTube content. How are we going to get into that conversation by creating unique content for that?
Exactly.
Good advice. Let's go to this one. This is from Spencer. Let me share this one. Would love your perspective on selling the SEO investment internally to executive audience who puts high value on typical sales / in-person tactics. I'll add one more, like just the short time to value, direct response tactics. How do you sell SEO?
Yeah. It's difficult. It is. We are all creatures of impatience. we all want more, and we all want it right now. So it is difficult because you are having that battle, at that kind of like soul level. So I'll acknowledge it's difficult. What I like to think about though, is one of my beefs right now, which again, I am a huge fan of every channel. I do not think SEO is the only, and I don't necessarily think it's the best. It just depends on your audience. But one of my big beefs right now is the difference in investment in paid search versus organic search. We talk to folks all the time who are spending 10 times on paid search what they are on organic search, and making a return of, call it 1.5 times or so. It's like, okay, you're making money on it, but you're spending a lot to get that.
Yeah, but do you know why? CFOs love that channel, because I can tell them, okay, if you give me 50 grand, we're going to give you X. It's harder to do that with SEO. And so it's 100% not the right strategy, but like, yeah, once you realize that this is how decisions get made at the executive level, it's actually not a battle about SEO or not. They don't care if you call one green Skittles or blue Skittles. They just like that it's very easy to measure and predictable.
Yes, absolutely. And so what's bizarre to me, over time, organic search has gotten this rap of being free, which is so far from the truth. But at the same time, it's got the lowest customer acquisition cost. And so it's so interesting because that CFO is going to see low customer acquisition cost and think, I don't want to invest more in that because we're getting so much out of it per dollar without considering, well, if you could 10x, if you 10x your investment in it, you would get 10x the results. So to me, it's just this very backwards thinking where, this extremely low CAC, high potential channel, which is SEO, is getting a tenth of the investment of a very high CAC, low potential. And if you turn it off, it goes away. Channel like paid search. So, but that doesn't really answer this question. I think it's about.
Hold on. I think what you said is important, which is like ultimately SEO can be an amazing channel, but it first starts with your business. And so if your business, if traffic is important to your business, and it's different to if you sell to, super enterprise, it might be way different. But like, if you can tell any story, Mitch, I'm talking out of my, what, right? Like I'm just making this up, but like,
sure.
Just tell me if this logic is wrong, but this is how I would think about it. Like if we can tell ultimately the goal of SEO is to drive revenue, but how does it actually do that? Well, improving SEO means more traffic to our website. Period. It's not about direct. It's the only channel that's all that matters. More traffic to our website. Can we tell a story that if we grew traffic to our website X, that would lead to Y in revenue, right? And so, if you're in an industry where the website is important and you're talking about conversion and website metrics and traffic, then I would ground it in that story. Like, hey, I'm going to show the CFO, hey, we're going to spend X on this investment in SEO. Here's what it means. Because I've talked to CFOs about this, and they actually, once they understand it, they actually love it. They're like, oh yeah. Because when you talk about it paid, they're like, I've literally had to show a CFO like, no. The paid stuff is, see these, the one, he's like, oh, I never click on those. Exactly. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get on the, this first 3 search results. And if we can do that across the board and with these search, with this intent, we think that we can grow website traffic 30% in the next year. And like at Privy was a company that I was at, for example, where they had a free trial motion and website traffic was one of the number one signals for new trials. And so we could very clearly show, if we grow website traffic 50% in the next 2 years, that will equal this many more trials. Here's how this is going to cost. And so I think you got to be able to come at it from that perspective. But there's definitely businesses where website traffic is not as important, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you said, the word like, here's what it looks like over 2 years. That's what I was going to say, is, my biggest advice on when you're selling it is sell the long-term vision. It is a long-term channel, not just because it takes a long time to ramp, but once ramped, it sticks around. We like to say that SEO is compounding. Well,
like I've been like, man, if I made that SEO investment 2 years ago, I wouldn't be banging my head against the wall so hard trying to hit our number right now, because I would, the website traffic baseline would have been 40% higher. So I've always felt it in reverse. Like, I wish I did this 2 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So if you can internally pitch a, 3 years from now, here's how much traffic we could be getting because it compounds over time, it's additive over time, and it sticks around. If you can pitch that, you're going to have a much better, much better luck. But your company and those, in charge may not care about the long term and may want to just nail this quarter. And if that's the case, no matter how you slice it, SEO is going to be difficult to sell in that situation. And, I think that's okay. But if you can convince folks to think of a bit longer term, it becomes very obvious very quickly that it's the right call.
I was going to ask you about, and this kind of came up in this, but it seems like one of the best fits for SEO is a company like Canva, for example, right? Where, what does Canva do? They make a free design tool. And I don't know if anybody's ever seen this, but what's amazing about their marketing strategy is they basically, every search term for like how to edit Instagram post or images for Twitter banner dimensions, they own every search result for that. But it's not just a blog post on how to do it. They actually drop you right into the Canva editor, and all of a sudden you're going from Google search for the thing that I was searching for to I'm actually doing it. That's like the ultimate recipe, but oftentimes the further you move up the funnel because of marketing, like the more enterprise you might be, obviously they're selling to small businesses. It's a much different motion. It gets much harder. But like, don't you think isn't something like Canva an amazing example of that, where like that's a company that is invested in SEO. It's not just a blog strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you're, is your assumption here that like SMB markets are more likely to get value out of search than enterprise?
I would say it's my bias, and I wanted to hear your opinion on it. My bias is that like if I was a CMO at that type of company versus a much more enterprise, I'm struggling to see how I would articulate like, here's why we're going to do SEO in the enterprise. So I would love to hear your like thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I've got a lot of thoughts on that, and I've helped a lot of enterprise companies with SEO in my background. I've helped FedEx with theirs, Sears and Kmart. This was about 10 years ago with Sears and Kmart. A bunch of different folks. And I always like to say enterprise people are people too. You think about the 6 billion to 8 billion searches that happen in Google every day. Enterprise folks are using that. And, I'll just share back from Lessonly days, Nike came to Lessonly through the exact same downloadable piece of content that, your standard SMB person would come through. I believe actually T-Mobile even came through a similar download. When I was working with FedEx back in the day, they were some of my favorite people I have ever worked with. But interestingly, the person that I was working with on SEO, who like ran SEO for FedEx, she was an intern 3 months earlier and knew nothing about SEO virtually. And that's FedEx, and our goal was to outrank UPS for the word shipping. That was the goal. And that company, and I think it's great because FedEx is huge about like hiring from within. But they had someone in place who, was not, fully capable of doing that and needed help to do that. So I would not assume that enterprise folks always use some sort of back channel forester for every decision.
Yeah. They're still, your point is good, which is like they're still using the internet, but
right.
It's going to require a different approach than Canva would, because you're not driving to you're not necessarily driving to some conversion point. You might measure it differently, even in that, like, at like the attribution funnel might be different, which is like maybe they've read pieces of content. Because I just think you try to get when you try to make it too like, well, they're going to read this article and then click book a meeting with sales. That's not how it's going to happen. But it's like, oh, well, they read, they've been coming to our website for 3 months and they read, they read these 4 articles and then reached out. Like, don't you have to kind of piece it a little bit together more to tell a story than you can in like the Canva model, right?
For sure. Yeah. The actual deal cycle is way longer. Actual, website life cycle is way longer as well.
Are you okay with like measuring like content in like influence then in that world?
For sure. Yeah, I think you have to.
Okay, we could do 100 more questions, but there's one more in chat, and then we'll wrap it up. Womp womp. Mitch, this has been amazing. You provided a ton of value. Obviously, I think people have a million questions. They will go to the Demandwell website and reach out to you for some reason or another. But let's end on I want to end on this one. This is from Amy. Hey Mitch. Question from a writer's perspective. Could you talk about what happens to a piece of content, like a blog post, let's say, once the SEO person's gets in front of it? Like, what's the handoff there, or what are they doing differently?
Yeah, absolutely. So
how do you SEOify it?
Yeah, the SEOifying. I like that. Well, what we like to do, and the way we built our product, because that's how we did it offline before it was a product, is I think the writer should know that SEO is important and valuable to the company, and be bought in on it, and be empowered with the words that should be included. So I like it says like, from a brief with no keywords, I think right there, you've got it wrong. Every content brief should have keywords in it if the intention is for it to rank in organic search. And I think the writer should be the one who's actually, integrating those in. It is such a waste of time if you do it the way that's described here, in my opinion. If you have the writer doing their thing and then you pass it to SEO and it's just so siloed, and it takes that SEO person forever to fit it in because it wasn't the intent. But if you as the writer can see, here are all these words that I should include, and we absolutely always are of the mindset that we're going to give you a bunch of words, but you don't need to use 100% of them. If there's one that just doesn't work out, don't use it. But you should at least know what those words are. And the reason for that is because it is, again, going back to the social experiment of Google, it's understanding your audience. So, why would you want to write something, or isn't it great if you could write something for someone knowing what they want to read before you've even written it?
That's great advice. The having briefs also would be helpful, but like ultimately it's got to be some collaborative process where like you're each meeting weekly or twice a month about the editorial calendar together and strategizing around what content you're going to create and then why.
Absolutely.
Okay, Mitch, this was awesome. Do you have any parting words or parting thoughts before we get out of here?
Yes, I do. I have a quick thing I'd like to point folks to if you're interested in.
Please do it.
Yeah. So obviously, if you're interested in demo, check out demandwell.com. It's a pretty standard conversion path there. But we also have this really cool thing that we call the Share of Search report. And we also call it the FOMO report. Because it essentially allows you to quickly understand, how you compare to your top 3 competitors and help you understand what are you missing out on. It shows you essentially your total addressable search market, your market share of that, and how much you're leaving on the table. So if you want to check that out, it's demandwell.com/FOMO, FOMO. We'd love to chat. And as Dave said, if anyone wants to reach out with additional questions, personal mission statement, I am here to help others grow. That is what I'm all about. So would love to help you all as much as I can.
Awesome. And what a great way to, instead of just sending people to your website, just a meta marketing lesson, like create an asset like that actually gives value. I mean, this is like back to like HubSpot website grader. This is a great idea. Mitch, thank you so much. I'll see you backstage for 2 seconds and then we'll carry on with our days. Everybody listening, watching, wherever you are, live in the future, sometime on demand. Thank you. Check out Demandwell. Go look up Mitchell Causey on LinkedIn and make sure you connect. And we will see you on a future episode. I think this was a really good one. Thanks, Mitch.